Welcome to The Whole You with Mary Beth and Gina, the Guru Girls.
Hi everybody!
Hello.
We are back again.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us. We're very excited to talk about our topic that Mary Beth promised we would talk about this week, which is
metabolism and weight, how it relates to your weight and how it can affect your weight and the factors that go into it. So we're going to talk about it. So always with anything, like any class you start, what is the definition? All right, so the definition is metabolism is converting food into energy. It is the process by which your body converts what you eat and drink into energy. During this complex biochemical process, calories in food and beverages are combined with oxygen to release the energy your body needs to function. You can even take it a little bit deeper and be a little bit more sciencey by saying the integration of biochemical reactions in the body and the complete set of chemical reactions inside a cell determines the pace at which an organism converts nutrients to energy and how it stores excess nutrients.
well, that makes sense.
For those science geeks out there, we went a little sciencey on that part.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll be able to clarify some of that as we go along.
Absolutely. So I think the biggest question a lot of people always have is, what affects my weight? Why am I gaining weight, or why am I losing weight really quickly and can't keep it on? So there's several factors that kind of go into that. So we're going to kind of dive into those and give you some thought around that. So the first thing is always our food choices. Okay.
Yes.
And it's not so much the calorie counting, as a lot of people will say. It's about what you are putting into your bodies. So I'm always a fan of the whole foods diet, for lack of a better term. I don't believe in diets, but eating whole foods, eating things that are outside of a package. Because inside those packages are a lot of refined sugars, which that's another key. How much sugar are you eating? People think a lot of times those snack bars are healthy because they say it's organic, or they say it's high protein, and when you look on the back label,
26 grams of sugar.
Exactly.
One serving, one bar.
Exactly. And every time I get a client that's like, oh, I'm eating really healthy, look at this, and then I look, I'm like, oh, okay, how many snack bars a day are you having? Because that's a lot of sugar.
Yeah.
And there are certain types of fruits that are also what we call the high glycemic, which would be like your bananas. And if you're eating, 3 of those a day, mangoes, papaya, then you kind of want to watch what you're taking in with that as well.
What's a good gauge, do you think, for the fruit? Because I know berries are lower glycemic, but if you didn't know, I mean, because you can't really just tell by sweetness, so what would you say would be a good gauge for somebody? Is there a...
Yeah, usually all the citrus fruits are low glycemic. All the berries are low glycemic. Those are great places to start. And believe it or not, here in Colorado right now we're in peach season. Peaches, nectarines, apricots also fall into that category.
Yummy.
Yes.
I love peaches. They're my favorite. So amazing. I've been doing this farmer's market on Friday mornings at the Stanley Marketplace. Oh, and they have this, farmers bringing fresh fruits. And she has these throwaway peaches when I come to buy a peach. They're $1, right? So I come to buy a peach, and she has these throwaway peaches in a bucket that are like actual regular peaches. And she's like, Gina, stop buying peaches. You could just take a throwaway. It's a sample. I'm like, my samples are like this big. Your sample is an entire peach. So I've been indulging on peaches.
And peaches are so good for you. And I'm always about eating seasonal too. So trying to eat what's in season actually also helps your weight, believe it or not.
Oh.
So like if in the winter you're trying to have a salad, and I've had personal situations with it as well, that I noticed I start gaining weight. And I'm like, what's going on? So I kind of look at what I'm eating. And a lot of times when I get back to eating seasonally, so like in the winter, more of the soups, the stews, the stir fries.
Interesting.
I do see a shift in my weight. So always knowing locally kind of what's seasonal.
Certainly.
And trying to eat seasonal also does help in certain situations. And then, really, how much junk food are you eating? Potato chips, your favorite pastas, eating a lot of spaghetti, and it goes back to the kind of the sugar thing too, but really looking at what's going to make you feel fuller. And vegetables are a great source, believe it or not. They're a great source of fiber, so they also help you feel fuller. And then you're less likely to snack and less likely to eat too much. So.
Yeah, I think because of the USDA food pyramid that we all grew up on, saying that you had to have 8 to 11 grain servings a day, it's misleading.
Yeah.
And we don't think about the fact that pasta is actually absorbed into the body and processed as sugar, rice. Becomes sugar. It's the starches, those types of things. They may not say, they have cane sugar in them, but they still are processed and turn into sugar in the body. So it's something to definitely think about.
Yeah, and the other piece is fried foods. So what is wrong with the fried foods is the type of oils that are used. The vegetable, highly oxidative. So what do I mean by oxidative? Well, there's antioxidants in our body. We want to eat the antioxidants because it keeps our body from getting oxidative. So getting into a situation like where it increases your inflammation and leaves you more open for health issues. So always healthier fat choices. So like your avocado oil, olive oil, I'm sure you've heard this, coconut oil, things of that nature. And then I think the other big thing is the dieting. Like right now, the big fad is the ketogenic diet, the paleo diets. But I'm not a fan of a diet at all. I'm really about what's bio-individual to you. What are the foods that you can and cannot have? And when we are dieting, there's a level of deprivation that goes with it.
Absolutely, it's not sustainable.
No, it's not sustainable. You are actually creating nutrient deficiencies for yourself. And some of the diets are meant to be a short term. Like there are definitely cases the ketogenic diet works. Brain tumors, they have had some great studies done on that, some great results with it. But anything just long term, you really have to look at, I'm limiting my food intake. Around that also plays into the stress component, which we'll get into a little bit more, but that, I have to eat this way and putting this hard structure in your life, and if I don't eat this way, then I'm going to get fat, and this, so it can create that kind of a cascading effect as well.
Certainly. I have a couple of friends that are doing the keto diet, and I they're like, I lost 28 pounds, or I lost 27 pounds in just a couple of weeks, and I was like, well, I said, that's great, and I said, but you have to consider how this is going to be for your health long term. And I said, do you know what keto stands for? And they're like, yes, it's ketosis. And I said, did you know that the state of ketosis is actually the body's state of starvation? And they were like,
exactly.
Oh my goodness. And I didn't know that. And I said, yeah. And I said, if you keep your body in starvation for long enough, what kind of a reaction are you going to have? Is it going to be a positive one?
Yeah, exactly. It's a great point, and that goes to that starvation, putting the body in starvation mode. It holds onto its fat. Because it's going to hold those fat stores to keep you surviving. And so that is...
I mean, if you consider the fact that, let's think about hibernation. The bears hibernate, and they live on their fat stores.
Correct.
Right? So their body burns that more slowly so that it can get through the winter. So it starts storing any excess calories to be able to survive the winter. So it's basically the same thing.
Yeah, it really is. And that's not an area you want to go, because your body then gets to a point of you used to being in that starvation mode. And when you're used to being in that starvation mode, you will gain weight when you go back to eating the way you were eventually.
My sister was so upset one time. She was really trying to lose weight, and she was effectively doing it, starving herself for a short term. And she went to see a nutritionist, and the nutritionist said exactly that expect to gain weight initially by eating the appropriate amount of food, because you are eating, she was eating less than 15,000 or 1,500 calories a day, which was not even her basal metabolic caloric requirement. And so she was so angry. She's like, well, I'm not going to work with that nutritionist because they said I was going to lose or gain weight. And I said, but honey, you will initially until your body resets. That metabolism has to kick back in and get used to the food that's so it's become accustomed to being without.
Exactly. And my daughter has seen it, and her college friends have seen it. They go on this, I'm going to do the intermittent fasting. Without the knowledge of how to do the intermittent fasting, and they end up putting themselves into starvation mode, and they walk away with the freshman 15, 25, and they're like, what's going on? And there's certain biochemical, for some people they do lose the weight, but for most people that biochemically it starts to turn on, I'm in starvation, packing on the pounds. Yeah. And you're right, it's all a resetting your body to get used to burning that food for energy. Which leads us kind of to movement a little bit too.
Do you want to talk about that now?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
So some of the things that we do at the Feel Good Place are movement classes and fitness classes, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about Mary Beth's talking about changing your diet, and maybe you are eating in an appropriate way, but you still are feeling lethargic and you're feeling like you're not losing weight, or you're not maintaining your weight, you're actually gaining weight. So just adding a little bit of movement into your life would actually do well for you. There's two different kinds of movement that I'd like to talk about. We've got the anaerobic and aerobic movement. So anaerobic are things that are blasts of power, like power lifting. You're lifting a weight, or you're running a sprint, or you're pushing something. So those types of those types of movements are anaerobic because they don't require the air to keep, or the oxygen to keep their sustainability in the energy process. They're just taking energy from your stored muscles. So if you want to have sustainable energy so that you can do something aerobic, like for example running or biking, cycling, dancing, taking a movement class or a cycling class, step aerobics, whatever it is, the body has to switch into the aerobic mode. So it's adding that oxygen in order to sustain your energy. So when you first start with anaerobic and with the beginning of your aerobic exercise, your body's actually burning carbohydrates. So people that are power lifters, they tell them to carb pack the night before. They eat lots of pasta and lots of rice so that they have enough of those stored carbs to get that energy that they need. But for most of us, we don't want that. We want to be able to have a sustainable amount of energy so that we can burn fat. So when you're burning the fat, your body has to switch from anaerobic to aerobic. So after being at an aerobic level, which is your working heart rate level, which we'll talk about in a second, for like 12 to 15 minutes, your body then switches from burning those carbs to burning the fat. And that's when you hear in the advertisements the fat burning zone. So that's basically you working at your heart's potential at about 65 to 75%. Oh. So, I mean, how do you figure that out, right?
Yes.
Because you don't want to work below your potential. No. You don't want to work above your potential because you could end up injuring yourself. So your working heart rate actually can be calculated really easily. They do have I can't say the word really well, but the Kevorkian formula, that's this huge formula of all these things. But the easy way is just to take the number 220 minus your age. So mine would be 171. I'm giving away my age. If you can do the reverse engineer the math. So 171 is my maximum heart rate. So that's, if I'm working at 171 beats per minute, I will kill myself. My heart will give out eventually. So I want to make sure that I'm working 65 to 75% of that. So I would just multiply 171 times whatever number you want within that fat burning zone, which I usually like to go around 70%. So it's about 120 beats per minute. So at 120 beats per minute, I am effectively now burning fat. And so I want to do that for an extended period of time after my 15 minutes. So like 30 minutes of cardio or 45 minutes of cardio 3 or 4 times a day is really great for that. Walking, power walking. You don't have to like run for 45 minutes. You can run for 20 minutes and then walk, or just walk for 45 minutes. As long as your heart rate is in that zone. I like to kind of also say like the talk test zone. Yes. So if you can have a conversation with someone, if you're walking next to them and you're power walking, and you can actually have a conversation or recite the Pledge of Allegiance or a song or something, you know that you're not working too hard. But if you can sing, then you're not working hard enough. Yes. So it's just kind of a good way of checking if you don't want to take your heart rate. And those high-fangled machines now in the gyms, they've got the heart rate monitor, so you can hold on to them and it'll tell you what your beats per minute are. If you don't have those, you can just take a pulse really quick. You're at your carotid or on your wrist. 10 seconds would give you a sixth of whatever your heart rate was. So mine was 120 beats. I divide that by 6, and then in 10 seconds, I should feel 20 heartbeats, and then I know I'm in my zone. So that's something,
that's a great trick. I like that.
It makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
When I would teach aerobics, we just stop, and take a little 10-second break just to see where we're at, and then you can raise your your intensity if you need to, or you can lower the intensity and keep your arms below your heart, and just little tips like that. But just like with food, as we were talking about, if you do anything for too long, like you always walk or you always run, you're doing the same types of things, your muscles adapt, your body adapts, so you don't burn as efficiently anymore. So in those cases, you can do things like interval training, which you might just walk, like if you're on a track, walk around the long parts and then run through the curved parts, and then walk to recover, and then run through the curved parts of the track. Just little things to get your muscles and your heart switched up a little bit, so it's not expecting you to always work at the same level. One thing to make sure of, and I know a lot of people want to lose weight and they want to really do it as quickly as possible, and it gets to be a little dangerous when you work too much too quickly or too much for too long of a period of time. With the interval training, the key here is that you do those little bursts of anaerobic, like the sprinting, to get that your body and your muscles pumping in a different way, so that you are not accustomed to that workout. But if you were to just sprint for 20 minutes, unless you're an Olympic athlete, you could really cause yourself harm. So one of the ways that you can kind of balance that is to just feel your body and check in with yourself. If you can do the talk test, that's great. If you can sing, you want to raise that up. But if you're getting to a point where you can't talk and it's for a long period of time, then you also might notice that you're getting lightheaded or nauseated. So those are signs that your body is no longer burning fat, but it's actually burning protein, and the protein that it's burning are your muscles. So your body's eating itself at this point. So you know that those are some things that there are some signals to just kind of back off just a little bit, give yourself time to recover. Lightheadedness could also mean, though, caloric issues.
Absolutely. Hypoglycemia is a very common blood sugar disorder. I have it. I remember being in church. I was born and raised Catholic out of Chicago, and I would go to Mass in the morning before we could have breakfast, because you can have breakfast an hour before communion. So I would start to get the tunnel vision as I was kneeling in the church, and right away I would remember my teacher, Mrs. Barker. She would grab me right away. She took me outside, set me down, put my head between my legs right away to bring that blood to the head. Oh my gosh, yes. So I am hypoglycemic, and what that means is that if I don't eat within a certain amount of time, my blood sugar crashes. In the simplest terms, that's kind of what it means. You can experience symptoms such as hangry, which is hungry and angry. Yeah, a lot of us experience that. Jittery feelings, weakness, extreme fatigue can hit really quick, and that tunnel vision, feeling like you're going to faint. People with hypoglycemia, it's generally, again, bio-individuality, but generally eating every 2.5, 3 hours, having a little something to keep that blood sugar regulated. But eventually, I've worked with clients, and I can get them to a point where we get their hypoglycemia regulated, where they can eat their 3 meals a day with maybe a snack in there, and that's about it.
It gets kind of scary.
It does.
Because I know I get hypoglycemic as well, and Tim can always tell, my friend Tim, because he'll ask me a question and it takes me longer to process, and I can't make a decision, easy thing like, what store do you want to go to, what restaurant do you want to go to, and my brain just, it's like, and I'm just like, and I don't notice that it's a terribly difficult decision, but he notices because it takes me 30 seconds to respond. So he's like, you need food, we're going to eat first, then we'll go to the grocery store, you know?
I love it. Well, and you do this over a period of time, years and years and years, that can lead to like insulin resistance. I'm sure you've heard that term a lot, where then your body, the sugar is, your cells are inundated with all this sugar, blood sugar wanting to get in there, and the body's, and the little cell's like, no, I'm full, I can't do it.
I can't have any more.
No more. It taxes your pancreas, and in simplest terms, which then you're on the path to diabetes. So really getting that blood sugar regulated, and that can affect your weight also as well. It kind of ties in with your stress, because it puts the body into a stress state, and then where that stress accumulates is like a tire in the middle.
Yes, we talked about that lovely thing last time.
Exactly. And other factors, we've talked about is the starvation bit, but how are you eating? Are you eating on the run? Are you eating in your car all the time? Do you not allow your body that time to chew your food? To sit down before and just, for some people they say grace. For some people they sit and they'll say a positive mantra or thought, or they'll just acknowledge the beautiful plate in front of them with the colors of the foods and the smells. But taking that moment before that first bite and really being cognizant of that. And then we live in a stressful world. We talked about busy last time. And the chronic stress over time, that does lead to blood sugar issues. It ties hand in hand. But also what that does is it taxes your adrenal glands. And it can affect, chronic stress on so many levels can affect your sleep.
So tell us more about adrenal glands, because some people don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Purpose of
They're
those
two cute little glands that sit on top of your kidneys. And their function is to, when a tiger shows up in the room, you run. They basically start out they get those muscles in gear. It pushes the cortisol out so that the blood sugar gets released so that you run from that animal. So there we are. We're talking about all this excess sugar being released in the system. Think about doing that every day. You think a tiger's in the room. So really shifting that stress perspective, but also that affects your sleep because that cortisol can turn on in the middle of the night. How many of you wake up in the middle of the night? I'm sure you have. Oh my gosh, okay, so tomorrow I've got to go here, I got to drop Susie Q off here, and then I've got, oh my gosh, I got this huge project due for work, and if I don't get it done, oh, and that bill's due, I forgot to pay that bill today. That is cortisol kicking in. That's a blood sugar dysregulation. It's turning your body on and waking you up. So being aware of those, and there's factors to mitigate that I do work with clients on. So that's another huge thing. And then how much of a sleep deprived society do we live in as well,
Yeah.
What is your ideal sleep amount? For me, I figured out 9 hours.
Yeah, right? Longer than we would expect.
What is yours?
Yeah.
Have you figured out what yours
It's
is?
8.5.
8.5. And everybody is so different.
Yeah.
But really targeting and having a good sleep, I call it sleep hygiene. What is your routine going into bed? That also helps kind of settle down. Like turn the devices off at least 2 hours before you go to bed.
Don't sleep with the television on.
No.
That is so interruptive. Even if you think you're sleeping, it is disrupting your sleep.
Exactly. Having an alarm clock right by your head. And some of us use our phones. So you have that device right by your head. That can keep you awake with EMFs. How dark is your room? How cool is your room? These are all factors. And when you don't get enough sleep, this is where it kind of comes into the weight thing, your body tends to crave more food the next day. You tend to eat excess calories, a lot more food, and a lot more comfort foods. It tends to crave those sugars, to wake up in the afternoon, to have that caffeine then, which taxes those cute little adrenal glands again, creating a stress level and cortisol levels.
It's a crazy cycle.
It is a crazy cycle, which can then lead to obesity. So it kind of all goes hand in hand.
So is the body craving the extra food because it's feeling off, or because it feels like it needs more energy because it's not rested?
Correct. It's feeling with the fatigue, it needs something to boost that energy to keep the body functioning through whatever it's functioning.
Which is why we crave the sugars and the caffeine.
Correct.
Yeah.
Which then leads to the weight gain.
Yes.
And I'll just touch on a couple other really quick areas. Emotions. There's a lot of emotional pieces around food, people, they're closet eaters. They eat a lot and binge food. So it's really looking at what's kind of under it for you, getting the right help for that, and really talking to someone about that. Emotions can play such a role, stress, because it triggers a stress response. There may be some history in your childhood, that's led you to either different eating disorders. So really, really looking at those pieces as well is important. And then pharmaceuticals.
Can I say something about the eating disorder
Absolutely.
thing? I had an interesting conversation with a friend of mine recently. I suspect that a friend of mine is binging and then purging, so like bulimia, so throwing up food after she eats a lot of it, because it's just in the last couple of months I've seen her eat a lot more than I've ever seen her eat in one time, and then I believe that she's purging it. So I was talking to another friend of mine who mentioned it as well. And so she said, you know, I was bulimic for 10 years. And I said, oh my goodness, I had no idea. I said, I'm so sorry to hear that. And she said, which I thought was so interesting, because Mary Beth was just talking about, think about what's behind that, why you were purging, or binging and then purging, or just binging, because of the emotional eating. And she said, I was bulimic for 10 years until I met, and I'm just going to say Steve, that's not his name, but Steve, and he's a very supportive human being, and he's just so loving to her. And she said, once I met him, I never did it again. And they're not together any longer, but she still doesn't need that, because whatever it was that was triggering her, the self-esteem issue that was triggering that, she no longer requires that the food to satiate for her.
Wow.
Isn't that incredible?
That is incredible. Well, you know, and the emotional piece goes around that structure piece too. There's so much that people feel they need to be so structured about it, like the judgment, you know, in the world we live in with social media, right here, and magazines, covers, what's on TV, you know, and it's being okay with who you are and finding who you are. So I always think that's get the proper help.
Oh, it took me years. I mean, I've always been fitness queen, you know, sports person, gymnast, athlete, you know, and then I turn, 47, 48, and I end up with autoimmune disease where the body eats itself. So now my muscles, like, it's hard to keep them toned, and I have a lot more atrophy in my skin and the muscles and everything. So I look like I'm 60 sometimes when I look at my legs, and it was really difficult at first for me to accept that and to wear shorts and to wear skirts still, because I just didn't like it and I felt icky.
Well, and the other piece that's going on is you're in the age of perimenopause too.
Tell me about it.
So we've got you could have some estrogen dominance going on, which I could get into hormones. It's a whole other topic.
Yes, it was another topic you were going to talk about,
but
because
I'm
definitely
talk about that,
peri now.
Yes.
And that's different
that
too.
Can
so it's
affect it.
And it's like, I was talking to my friend the other day, and something, I don't remember what inspired it, but I am no longer as tolerant and as patient as I used to be. And so I said to him, I said, oh my gosh, why does God do this to people? I said, make me have hot flashes, make it intolerable to even be in my own body, and then give me less tolerance and less patience in general. What is the purpose of this?
Oh, we as women, what we go through.
What we go through.
Yes, and being patient with your body in that process. We could do definitely a separate, I think this would be a great separate one, is to address female hormones and some of the relation with that. But being kind to ourselves as our bodies are transitioning, so many women fight it. And embracing it, they call it, it's another level of wisdom. I've heard of by a lot of different traditions or beliefs, and embracing that a woman comes into her true wisdom as she goes through the change, and to kind of look at it from that point of view. So just some tips. But a couple of things really quick to pharmaceuticals. So if there's certain kinds of drugs you're on for certain conditions, they can deplete your body of nutrients. They can reroute some of those pathways that the nutrients are supposed to go on. It can diminish certain vitamins and minerals in your body, some of the fat-soluble vitamins. It depends on what pharmaceutical you're on. So keep in mind, too, be gentle with yourself. If there's just certain conditions you have and you are on pharmaceuticals that you have to be, that could be a contributing factor. It doesn't have to be the end-all, be-all with everything, but it can as well. And inflammation as a general rule. Like you mentioned, autoimmune condition.
Yeah.
Cancer. Food reactions that you don't even realize you're having. I mean, you think you're eating that kale every day is great for you. Maybe it's not great for you.
Maybe you're allergic to it.
Maybe you're reacting to it.
Or should you be eating it every day?
Exactly. Variety in the diet. Chronic stress, which we talked about. Chronic diseases. Lyme. You hear a lot about Lyme lately. That's becoming quite an epidemic. That can also create weight issues as well. GI issues, so if you're not breaking down your proteins because your hydrochloric acid is low, maybe your small intestine, you have a little bit of leaky gut. I'm sure you've heard of that, intestinal permeability.
That always sounds so wonderful, doesn't it?
It does.
Leaky gut.
It's a great term. And then we go back to sleep patterns too. How are you sleeping? But I mean, there's definitely a lot of different issues around it. Some nutrients to consider are definitely a great whole foods diet that's tailored to you. your omega-3s. So getting some of those good fish oils, eating some great fish. I'm always a food first person, so wherever you can get it in food first. Probiotics, and there's some great probiotic type foods, but there's some great probiotics when you travel. I always recommend it. Vitamin D and your B vitamins. Your B vitamins are so vital to getting that whole metabolic system working and functioning at optimal. Food first always, though.
Yes.
Yeah. But there's other areas we can get into. We can get into the hormones. Maybe we'll dive into that another day. But
And knowing with the vitamins, which are good vitamins, because Americans have like the most expensive urine, right?
Yes,
because the body is not absorbing necessarily the vitamins, especially if they're not quality.
Not the quality. So some of your general stores are not necessarily good places to buy. You want to find a little bit more of the health food stores, or a practitioner like myself that sells a higher quality, has access to the higher quality grade that don't have a lot of the additives or the allergens in it, because they put a lot of fillers in it.
And signs of how your body reacts to it. Like, for example, if you're burping up the fish all day long, you're not absorbing it, and it's not a good one for you.
And if you open it up and it stinks, it's oxidated, so it's not good. Not good at all. So yeah, and then like with the B vitamins, you should notice a shift. You should, not for everybody, but you should notice a little bit of a shift in your energy. So are those B vitamins giving you that little boost or not? And if you need it.
Is the yellow urine associated with B vitamins mean it's absorbing, or does it mean you're wasting it?
No, it's B2 riboflavin that causes the bright yellow urine.
So it's okay.
Yeah, but because it's water soluble, your body will take what it needs, and then you will urinate the rest out.
Okay,
so
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. All right.
Wow, well, we just dumped a whole bunch of stuff on you today.
Yes. And if you want us to go deeper, please comment below and say, hey, I want more information on this, or oh, I have this great idea for this topic. Do you guys know anything about this? Can you talk about it? We're open to suggestions as well.
Absolutely. I'm excited to hear more about the hormones, so I'm going to comment.
There you go.
Right here that I want us to talk about hormones.
And remember, select the bell.
Oh yeah,
so that you'll get
bell.
our notifications of when our new
when we post.
Exactly.
And like us.
Yes.
And subscribe to us.
Yes.
And I think you're supposed to like each video, even if you don't. No, okay, if you don't like the video, you don't have to like it. But it is supportive.
It is supportive. Then we can keep this information coming to you, so it's all good.
All right, cool.
All right.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We don't know what we're talking about next time. We haven't really talked about it, so we won't do an outro
it's gonna be a surprise.
We have a surprise
topic
coming next time.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you
guys
all.
enjoy.
Stay healthy.
Bye.